moving right along with the show and into our next topic, more on the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, specifically in relation to their offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. What is going on with him? We talked about Nathaniel Hackett recently. I want to say maybe about 2 weeks ago, and the reports coming from SNY that the New York Jets had been looking for someone to come in and essentially try and replace Nathaniel Hackett, or at least take the play calling responsibilities away from him, all stemming from the sort of season that they had last year. It wasn't great, obviously, because Aaron Rodgers went out, but after that, with an offensive coordinator, I'm sure most people have the idea in their mind that once someone goes down, any capable offensive coordinator would be able to maneuver their game plan, change the strategy around a little bit to fit what players are available to him at that moment. Obviously, that was Zach Wilson, and that was one of the biggest criticisms, that Nathaniel Hackett really didn't try too hard to change his way of calling plays, that it was so tailor-made for Aaron Rodgers that once Zach Wilson came in there, it looked like it did last year. And I'm not saying that his responsibility is to make Zach Wilson look like Aaron Rodgers with this offensive system that he tries to change to Zach Wilson, but, you have all the reports coming out of the play calling. You have Mecole Hardman also touching on this situation when he was with the New York Jets on the Pivot podcast, and saying that once Aaron Rodgers went down, in his words, he felt that the team had no direction. There was no leadership coming from the offensive play calling. So you have those comments, and now these reports also sort of show some truth maybe to what Mecole Hardman said, and how that leaves Nathaniel Hackett in terms of play calling. There was a lot of scrutiny heading into this offseason about his job security, and last week reporters also asked Nathaniel Hackett on these reports, and he addressed them a little bit and said that he does believe that he has the confidence of Robert Saleh and the team to be the offensive coordinator, and also mentioned that there were some conversations had and that everything's been addressed, apparently, according to Nathaniel Hackett. No specifics on what has been addressed specifically, but he is aware of the New York Jets' conversations with other potential candidates for offensive coordinator positions. So, he stayed pretty, general about it. He didn't go into too many specifics, but the biggest thing for me that he said was that he felt that he had the confidence of Robert Saleh and the New York Jets team. And how you take that and determine that, I'll get into that in just a few seconds. But the topic at hand now is Aaron Rodgers. What does Aaron Rodgers feel about this? How does he view this whole situation? Because he is getting the play calls from Nathaniel Hackett. And Rodgers explained why fans should feel good about Nathaniel Hackett at this point, running the offense, and why he has so much confidence in him. He said, "You should trust me, and I trust Nathaniel Hackett." So, to me, that's the end of story. There's been a lot of BS that's been said out there. There's a lot of things that have gone on the last couple of years that he's dealt with that I think pretty professionally. And he also stressed that their relationship, to trust their relationship that he has with Nathaniel Hackett and the rest of the staff. And it is important to point out, Aaron Rodgers obviously had Nathaniel Hackett in his time with the Green Bay Packers. Then in that whole offseason where Rodgers was definitely leaving the Packers where he wanted to sign, the Jets brought in Nathaniel Hackett to be their offensive coordinator in a ploy, wanting to get Aaron Rodgers to join because they had their offensive coordinator there. That is just a strategic way of going about it. They'll say that that wasn't their intention, but it is what it is now. Aaron Rodgers joined, and now they're again running similar offense that they did in Green Bay, continuing on with that relationship. And although Aaron Rodgers said that to ESPN, he also did mention that in a recent development to their offense, that Robert Saleh is now becoming more involved on the offensive side of the ball. And why that's sort of eye-catching is because Robert Saleh was hired to be the head coach as a defensive specialist coach. He came from being the defensive coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers. He got the Jets job. So to say he's being more involved in the offense could be a little confusing just because you might not think he has too much expertise in that field. But Aaron Rodgers commented on that and confirmed those, rumors of Robert Saleh by saying, as a defensive coach, he's been in that room a lot. But he's been kind of sitting over the left of me a good amount of the offseason so far, so we appreciate his influence. He's brought some really good ideas to the table. He's added a lot of interesting stuff that you'll see throughout the OTAs and in training camp. Like I mentioned, it doesn't follow the traditional sort of path that the head coach takes when he's hired, from what field he's hired. For Robert Saleh now to be more involved in the offense, I think goes back to that point of Nathaniel Hackett that I mentioned before, in him feeling the confidence of Robert Saleh and the New York Jets organization. Well, now you have this development where Robert Saleh is more involved in the offense, and not that it directly contradicts what Nathaniel Hackett is feeling, the full confidence of Robert Saleh and the New York Jets. I think that might be where this could be viewed a little bit differently. If you had the full confidence, I don't think the head coach would want to get involved on the offensive play calling, especially like I mentioned, if Robert Saleh is a defensive guy. There's no reason, realistically, if you have a lot of trust in your offensive coordinator, for you to really be putting your input into that sort of field, especially when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers as well. All the experience he has, all the knowledge and just wherewithal that he does have as the quarterback, as a very talented quarterback with a lot of success in his career. You have those two guys in that room. You would probably feel pretty confident about those guys fully running the offense, but now Robert Saleh is getting more involved in it. So right now I'm having a little bit of thoughts as to, what do they really feel about Nathaniel Hackett? And with Robert Saleh becoming more involved, I think that sort of gives you an inclination as to where this is sort of pushing, especially because of all the pressure mounted now on the New York Jets. Last season, they were supposed to be the Super Bowl contenders. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. You missed out on a great opportunity last year. Now this year, they get all those primetime games. Everybody wants to see them and view them as Super Bowl contenders because they got a lot better. And with that, I don't think it's a secret now at this point that if this whole operation sort of blows up in their face and they don't get the best version of Rodgers, or he gets hurt again and the rest of the team looks pretty bad as they did last year. Aaron Rodgers even said it, he said if he doesn't perform as well as he has been or is capable of, all of them are probably, getting shown the exit door at the end of this season. So he has acknowledged that pressure. Everybody else is no stranger to it as well with the New York Jets. So that also has something to do with this whole situation playing into it. I'm sure Robert Saleh, after being there for 3 years, sort of feels that pressure as well. Like Aaron Rodgers said, they're all going to be out of there if they don't perform up to the level that is expected of them. So in his best efforts to try and avoid that, he'll get more involved in the offense and really make sure they're doing everything to his liking to really get success out there on the field. And in terms of Aaron Rodgers' relationship with Nathaniel Hackett, and does he really trust Nathaniel Hackett and their relationship? I believe that Aaron Rodgers trusts Nathaniel Hackett's willingness to allow Aaron Rodgers to change the play and interpret a play call to the best of his ability. That relationship that they have, I think, is very strong, and there's a lot of trust in that. So with an offensive coordinator, sometimes if they're really hard bent on their play call, on their philosophy, they're not going to take any quarterback really, other than I guess Aaron Rodgers realistically. But most quarterbacks, if they're trying to change the play call, the offensive coordinator will not like that and will want to stick to his game plan. And I think Nathaniel Hackett and his willingness to allow Aaron Rodgers the freedom to maneuver and change the play, audible to something completely different. That sort of trust, I think Aaron Rodgers really appreciates it, and having that good relationship is something that really suits them both. Because say the Jets brought in somebody completely different this year, a more established offensive coordinator with more, stricter philosophies and concepts that he wanted to stick with and was really a believer in. If Aaron Rodgers came in there and tried to change it, audible to it, and really just throw the game plan out the window, those two guys would have probably butted heads, and that would have benefited nobody. So I think this was probably the best scenario for the Jets to try and get the best out of Aaron Rodgers, to keep him happy and just to keep the harmony around the entire organization, because the last thing you need is something like that really getting in the way of football. And that relationship, how it pans out, we're going to finally see it hopefully throughout the entire regular season this year in 2024. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, we'll really see if it was a good decision to keep Nathaniel Hackett, and to see where Aaron Rodgers is physically, how he's moving out there. He's looking so far so good in OTAs, but obviously the regular season is a different animal. And now, with the impact of the pressure, with all those primetime games, how does that also affect them? I think it will take a toll on them, but we'll see how they execute it in the regular season. But that's where it stands in terms of Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, where they're feeling this offseason. But in the meantime, we're going to continue on with the rest of the show. A couple more topics to talk about on today's episode. Two more quarterback topics on one, Zach Wilson getting acclimated to his new team on the Denver Broncos and what he had to say on the whole transition from the Jets to his new team. And also Trey Lance getting ready for a pretty big offseason this year, a full offseason with the Dallas Cowboys, what he has to say about it, and what this long-term plan could look like with Trey Lance if Dak Prescott maybe decides to move on in 2025. Those two stories are coming up in just a few seconds. We'll be right back on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.